Hello, I'm Rachel Clapp Miller with Force Management. Thank you for watching this video on the different ways to implement MEDDICC. Today, we are going to talk about aligning your implementation with the outcomes you're trying to drive as a company, as a leadership team, and those outcomes can also help you cut through the noise of what type of training provider you want to bring in. Not all MEDDICC implementations are the same. The outcome you get depends on the type of implementation you invest in. Joining me for this conversation is our own Chief Operating Officer, Dave Davies, and our co-founder and president, John Kaplan. Hello to you both.
Hello, hello.
So let's just get started with why MEDDICC works, why it's so popular. John, give us a rundown.
Well, I think most people have heard of MEDDICC before, and you know, it's the most prevalent qualification criteria in the world, not just in technology companies, but you know, really any company that's selling anything, I think, can benefit from it. And you know, I think there's some misnomers a little bit, so we'll try to Dave will do a great job in helping us with this, but you know, it's not a sales process. It is an elite qualification criteria. It was created back in the day for, you know, for the most elite, effective, predictive sales organization on the planet, which was PTC. PTC went from 0 to $1 billion in less than 10 years. The stock split 5 times in 7 years. They went 43 straight quarters with never missing their number in Wall Street. I don't say that as like a brag, like I didn't do that, but I was a part of it. Like I was a soldier at that time. And when MEDDICC was implemented, and it was absolutely amazing. You think about that, 10 straight years of never missing our number to Wall Street. So I think there's people get it wrong a little bit. So there's a lot of debate about where it came from. Quite honestly, I don't really care. It's awesome. You know, I think when people, you know, Dave's going to talk about this a little bit. I think when people use it as a compliance tool versus a confidence and conviction and coaching and development tool, I think that's when you get a little bit awry. So I'm really happy to be here. Really happy to have Dave, who I consider a 100-pound brain, to really kind of talk to us about, you know, what the greatest companies on the planet are doing with it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you can't argue with those results that MEDDICC can drive if you implement it correctly. And there is a sea of providers who help companies implement. Dave, there's really a gamut here.
Yeah, I'm on a lot of sales calls, and you know, a lot of them are competitive, and there's a lot of confusion in the market about who to go with, right? Vendor selection, which is always a difficult thing. You want to do a sales transformation, you're betting your job on it. You kind of only get one shot at it. So who you go with is very important. And if you look at the market, it falls into predictable buckets. You have the do-it-yourselfers out there. I try to do it myself inside of the company. You know, I find a really good book on it, and I decide to implement the thing myself. And a lot of times that goes well. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. Then you have the various consulting firms, right, that are out there. And, you know, this is either the offering they do or one of many offerings that they do. And there's a lot of people out there who are ex-sales executives who are hanging out a new business shingle, and this is their entree into the market. So it's a fragmented market. It's very confusing. And we often get asked advice on who to go with and why we would go with them. And so after numerous conversations with numerous customers, that's when we invented this maturity model to try to make sense of the market as to what we're seeing out there. And really, you know, to use a fishing analogy for John there,
yeah,
you know, bait you troll determines the fish you catch, right? So that the approach that you want to take in the market for rolling this out will determine what results you get, because not all approaches are going to yield the same results. And so just like with anything else, if you want greater return, you tend to have a greater investment. And that just may be in time, but it also tends to be in, you know, real dollars as well. So we needed a way to parse the market, try to make sense of it, so that people can make rational, calculated decisions when they're determining, which approach to take and possibly what business partner to align with. That's why we did this.
Right. So let me pull it up right now. We've developed this MEDDICC Maturity framework that breaks down what Dave's talking about. It's a useful tool. So Dave, talk about what a maturity model is and why it's useful.
Yep. So up and to the right is always good, right? Same with this model as well. We got the solution there. So let's go up and to the right. And what we tried to do, first of all, was to separate out the concept of an initiative being an event versus a program. And events tend to be awareness oriented. I want to make you aware of something that's out there. I give you a basic overview of what it is, and then it's kind of up to you in order to determine how that applies to your world. Whereas a program is something that goes over time. It's not a one and done, and we hope for the best and a miracle occurs and everybody's adopting all of a sudden. A program is something that's more systematic, and it increases your probability of adoption because it's a process that takes place over time rather than just a one and done that happens at my SKO. And so as you move from the bottom left to the upper right, what you find is it's more of a program, it's more sustainable, there is a higher level of effort, but you also are increasing the probability of a good outcome. And you're increasing the probability of a high ROI that will pay for the investment that you make into it.
So if we look at this bottom half, John, can you talk about get us started here on the bottom half of this maturity model?
Yeah. So Dave, I really like how you've outlined this for it's very, very consumable. And I look at this and I see the bottom half and I see, there is a need for basics out there. There's a need for common language. I like how even events can be powerful, but what I like about your discussion is that, processes versus events normally are long lasting. And, but, the bottom half here has some value, there is some value with the acronym and letter connectivity and letter definition and common language, but would you mind just talking a little bit about, qualities that you've seen from companies that are kind of a good fit for the bottom half?
Yeah, typically in the bottom half, it's kind of an entry level thing. Sometimes smaller companies, that may have a lot of constraints on their investment. They want to introduce the concept of opportunity qualification, which is really what MEDDICC is all about, but they want to crawl into it rather than more of a walk or a run approach. And so at the very bottom, there are a lot of service providers out there that are hanging there by the bottom rung. I'm going to come in, I'm going to talk to your company, I'm going to tell you what each one of the letters is, and then I kind of leave you to your own devices to apply that to the opportunities that you're facing. So it's a good awareness. It's good basic awareness. One step up from that is a recognition that these letters can't exist just on their own, right? So there's a connectivity that occurs between the letters. So I walk you through each one of the letters. I gave you a basic definition of what it is. But then one step up from that is, well, how do these letters relate to each other? For instance, there's a relationship between decision criteria and competition, right? Whenever we're doing opportunity qualification, one of the first questions is, who are you competing against? And what are the capabilities that the prospect is looking to instill? And so if I look at the decision criteria of how they're going to, either from a technical or a business perspective, how they're going to make a decision, what's the anatomy of the decision, how do our capabilities stack up against those decision criteria, who are the competitors, to include do it yourself or do nothing, and then how are they strong against those decision criteria? Or for instance, the concept of metric, identified pain, or decision criteria are not absolute. It's not like the entire chain of people who are going to be part of the decision process all have the same metrics, identified pain and decision criteria. So what you really have to do is you have to say, how is the decision going to be made? And then who's who in the zoo, right? Who's the economic buyers, the technical buyer, who are the influencers? And then what are their individual metrics, identified pain and decision criteria that they're going to use, rather than thinking it's one big absolute? Because really what we're trying to do at the end of the day is get a collective yes across everybody who's in the decision-making process. In order to do that, I need to understand what they care about. And if I don't know the metrics, identified pain and decision criteria for all of them, then I'm going to be oversimplifying. So definition of the letters is good. It's a good entry-level basic, but there's a lot of interplay between the letters that whenever you're rolling this out, you have to be aware of that, because that's really what happens in the wild. And if we're going to attach ourselves to what's really happening out there, we have to be aware that this is not as simple as letter by letter. So connectivity is a big thing.
I love where you're going with this, Dave. And I get really excited when I think about really the potential of MEDDICC at the highest level. And it is when you think about, if you're a manager and you're listening to this, the need for, back in the day at PTC, we had to be great coaches and developers of talent. So we didn't use MEDDICC as a compliance tool. We used it as a coaching and development tool and a qualification tool. And we took that responsibility very seriously, because we knew that when we overlay, I call MEDDICC like an X-ray. When you overlay it on top of an opportunity, it's like doing an X-ray on a bone. That you have a broken bone in your leg or something. You're X-raying your leg, and you see that you have a broken bone. Okay, we have a broken bone. But what I love about coaching and development of these principles, Dave, we talk about how to heal the bone. And I think the greatest companies that take it to the highest level, and companies that, like in our industry, that take this kind of program to the highest level, they're teaching managers and coaches how to, they're not managers and coaches, they're just, that's synonymous, really. They're teaching them how to turn this into a confidence and conviction exercise versus a compliance exercise. I get a little frustrated when I see people go through a MEDDICC exercise with a rep, and they're just kind of like, you have this, you don't have that, you have this. I looked in CRM and it's connected, and people think, oh, we've connected to CRM, so we're in the program stage. Well, not necessarily. If it's a check in the box, if it's just managing activity, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about living, breathing, making it a part of your bones. And you use it for opportunity coaching. You use it to help reps be prepared. You use it to help them with the how. Okay, it's not just I don't have access to the economic buyer. Okay, no kidding, Sherlock. Okay, now what do we do? So how do we? So it really helps a company take, I call it knowledge, skills, and culture. That's how it's programmatic. That's how it's coaching and developing as it relates to that. So if you're not using MEDDICC as a coaching tool, you're only using it as an auditing tool, you're probably not as high on this maturity model as you think you are.
So that really then moves us up, and now we're segueing between an event and a program, right? And so what that tends to mean is, instead of a one and done, we show up, we have some big splash at the SKO, we have a t-shirt gun, and everybody gets excited, and everybody goes back and has to figure it out on their own. It's actually part of a program. And that's where you have, MEDDICC 2.0 or MEDDICC 201. After there's been sufficient soak time and practice time in the field, what we'll find is, both from an individual contributor and from the manager's perspective, there are places where you're going to get stuck, right? I may have a hard time delineating a champion from a coach, or I may have a hard time quantifying the metrics in the identified pain in order to derive an ROI calculation. And so what tends to be good is we give you the basics, we do live deals, we talk about live deals, go out and try it for a couple months, come on back, And then it's a stuck, unstuck drill. And it's kind of predictable where people get stuck and unstuck. So as you're looking for a service provider that goes beyond just events and the baseline, look for advanced curriculum as well, right? The stuck, unstuck, continuous learning. That's very, very important. And then as you pointed out, John, too, MEDDICC isn't a sales process. It's a litmus test that sits on top of a sales process that gauges the strength of the opportunity. And it allows you to make a continuous qualify in, qualify out decision. And so whenever we look at somebody's sales process, one of the things we look for, there's a lot of things we look for because not all sales processes are created equally. One of the things we look for is, have you embedded your opportunity qualification methodology into your sales process? Because if I'm a manager, first line manager, and I don't want it just to be an audit, I just don't want it to be an inspection, I actually want to lend value and help progress the deal, then I have to do that in a predictable way. The rep needs to know the kind of questions I'm going to ask, right? So that there's a consistency about it. And so there's this virtuous 3-step process that the best sales organizations in the world do. They do good pre-call planning, they do great sales call execution, and then they do great post-call debriefs. So if you look at the value of MEDDICC, that's on the bookends. As I'm doing my pre-call planning and getting my game face on, if I'm going to structure that in the correct way, then I need to use MEDDICC to let me know what gaps in information do I need to satisfy. So the outputs of my pre-call planning and my opportunity qualification, I'm looking for gaps, right? We're all looking for gaps. And then I have the actual sales call and I'm filling the gaps. I fill those gaps. And then on the debrief, we're figuring out, all right, I had a MEDDICC score of this walking in, red, green, yellow. Where am I afterwards? And so it gives me a little bit of structure on my sales call. And that's really, as a manager, that's really what I want to do, because those are teaching moments. And after I have that pre-call planning, the natural result of that are, what are the discovery questions I'm going to ask to find out more information, or what are the trap setting questions I'm going to ask to set competitive traps for the competition. And so that comes out of my pre-call planning. So there's a natural interface between the outputs of MEDDICC, opportunity qualification, and my value-based conversation that I have with the customer. I like to think about it is that art is what happens when I'm with the customer. Science is what happens when I'm not.
Great.
Right? So there's a lot of science that's required to make the art form happen. MEDDICC is science. My conversation with the customer, my value-based conversation with the customer is art. It's like you see these improv artists or these stand-up comedians, you think they're just winging it. They're not. I mean, for every half hour I'm up there, there is a week of preparation, right? And the quality of conversation I have with the customer is directly proportional to the amount of work I put into it. And that's where MEDDICC comes into play. And that's why you don't want to cheat it. And that's why you don't want to make it just a compliance drill, because it is going to increase the probability that I have a great customer conversation, because it zeroes me in on exactly what I need to be doing as part of that call. Then the post-call debrief, also powered by MEDDICC, is a mechanism of taking stock of where I am and where I, therefore need to be moving forward. So it's a continuous virtual loop that's so far away from compliance and inspection. It's just the way I need to run my sales organization if I really want to, qualify, progress, and close these deals as quickly as possible. And then there's obviously a positive impact on things like forecasting accuracy, right? And slip deals. And one of the worst things in the world that can happen is I have a deal that falls out late in the sales cycle that was never meant to be. And I've involved my engineers, I've involved my finance and accounting team, my deal desk, and I had everybody working on things that were never meant to be, rather than qualifying it out early and working on something that has a higher probability of a result. But you just can't do that winging it. There has to be some science behind all of that that powers the art form of the actual sales call.
Right, and that's what you're talking about here, Dave, is that intersection of MEDDICC and the sales process, and then into sales messaging. Your teams need to have the ability to have the conversation that allows them to get the information to qualify the deal, to fill in the gaps. And that's why the sales messaging component is so important. And I know, John, we've had a lot of conversations about where people go wrong with MEDDICC, compliance versus coaching, but also a lot of it has to do with this value-based conversation piece. If you don't have that, it can really hurt the outcomes that you're trying to drive as an organization.
Yeah. So first of all, you really got to up your game when you're on a podcast with Dave Davies, man. I mean, like the professor, the 100-pound brain, he brings it. So you know, I get exposed here a little bit. I gotta come up with the, you know, higher vocabulary, but I love what Dave's talking about, because for me, the art and science is like, okay, if you're listening to this, you have to provide your people with two things, and it creates the third: knowledge and skills, and it creates culture. That's what we had back at PTC. You know, we were the voracious qualifiers. Like, we were the kingpins or the queen pins of voracious qualifying. And the metric was 43 straight quarters of never missing our number. Well, that wasn't by accident. So PTC gave us the knowledge. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so knowledge, and you're talking about a value-based conversation, Rachel. You got to think about these 4 essential questions of value. They're as old as dirt, and they're going to be around a lot longer than we are on this earth. What problems do you solve for your customers? How specifically do you solve those problems? How do you solve it differently or better? And where have you done it before? These are kind of like the essential questions of value. So this is the knowledge that you have to bring to your people in your organization. The skills is you teach them how to deliver that. You teach them how to discover that. You teach them how to influence decision criteria. You teach them how to speak to the economic buyer. You teach them how to build champions. It's like, this is where this kind of knowledge and skills comes together. And when you provide them knowledge and skills, you are actually making them into an elite culture. So as you think about what Dave is talking about here, is bringing those two together. Once you get a platform of qualification in place, then you got to bring the knowledge and skills. It's like, okay, so when I'm talking about this, Rachel, I'm just thinking about people. Let's get MEDDICC training, and they do the acronym thing, and they do the letter training. That doesn't get you spit, in my opinion. It doesn't get you spit. It's like the elite companies, they look at it and they go, okay, we're going to put this qualification criteria in place. We're going to put in knowledge on top of that. We're going to bring skills on top of that, and we're going to create a culture of accountability that produces those kind of results.
Yeah, and what's key with all that, like we were touching on, is there has to be a so what associated with the output of my qualifying. So I like to think of it as, you know, MEDDICC being an opportunity qualification methodology that facilitates a structured conversation that I have with my manager, gaps of which inform a value-based conversation that I have with the customer. But I need both. And like my good friend Frank Azzolino says, MEDDICC is one hand clapping. You need the other hand to resolve those gaps that output from a MEDDICC opportunity qualification, and that is your value-based selling methodology, and that's why they work together. And then now if we extend this thing too, the thing that, you know, if we go up the ladder a little bit, Rachel, we start hitting the top two, and this is when it really becomes a program, right? So there's an adoption methodology that makes sure that people are actually using it, they're engaging with it, and ultimately we get the ROI that justifies the expenditure that we put in it. And what we found is, if you decompose adoption, what does it take to adopt anything? It could be MEDDICC, whatever you're trying to do within a company. You're trying to slam in a CRM or whatever you're doing. There's really 3 things that need to be present if something's going to be adopted. It needs to be relevant, it needs to be reinforced, and it needs to be measured. So I'm not just rolling out a generic MEDDICC program. The more I customize it to our selling environment, the easier it's going to be for a rep to relate to it, because I'm giving them not only the why are we doing this, what is it, but how exactly do I use it? And so they don't have to make that connection between what you're saying and what I'm going to do tomorrow. You make that connection for them. That's relevancy. None of this works if the chain of command, starting with the first line manager, isn't reinforcing it, right? If we went over the hearts and minds of the first line managers, we went over the hearts and minds of the troops, right? Leaders lead from the front. So there has to be a reinforced mechanism that is on the shoulders of the first line managers and their chain of command to make sure that it sticks. You know, we see a lot of these implementations, especially the do-it-yourself implementations, where they had a great rollout. It was wonderful. Everybody got excited. And then the thing died. Everybody just kind of went back to what they were doing before. Why? Because leaders didn't lead from the front and they didn't reinforce it. The other thing that keeps everything on track is measurement, right? There are certain KPIs that a good MEDDICC implementation should have. Like I said, you know, forecast accuracy, split deals, things like that, where you need to establish what's our baseline, what's our target, and how are we trending, so that if we roll out a program, this or any other program, and we're not trending in the right direction, we can make a mid-course correction rather than waiting a year from now and saying, oh, it was just a big failure, it's a stupid methodology, it doesn't work. No, you have to know along the way if you're headed towards your North Star or not. And then really the capstone of everything at the top, that's why it's at the apex, is I have all these things, but what really makes it sticky is if it's tech enabled. Because as you all know, from an enablement perspective, technology supports methodology and vice versa. They're better together. So if I can automate a technology, have a single source of record, then we're not just talking about concepts and we forget what we said. We can actually look at the deal represented in a system. We can see where we are from a red, green, yellow perspective. We can resolve the gaps with the customers, update where we are, and see progress. And that's what keeps the rep from getting a million questions about how's the deal going, how's the deal going, how's the deal going. Well, go to the system and you can see how the deal is going, to include how it's tracking. And that's why, you know, things like a Clary or a Gong, you know, they powered by these concepts, it makes it better if the technology is there and we're all using that. It's, you know, it's built into the CRM, and that's just really icing on the cake, but it's a big deal. And that's why it's kind of at the apex, because what you know, you never want to automate a bad process or you have bad things happening real fast, right? So we want to make sure that the process or the process, if I'm in EMEA, is working really, really well. And then we can automate it, right? And that makes everything better, greater visibility. And what we find is that when people have MEDDICC implementations and they automate them, right? It's stuck into their CRM in one form or another. It's in their, you know, conversational intelligence tools like Gong. It's in AI tools, you know, like a Clarity, something like that. It's just better, and it works better. And again, remember, as I follow that swoosh up, it is a greater investment of time and money, but you're also having massive ROI that more than pays for everything. So it's kind of a pick your adventure sort of a thing.
Right. You made such great points there, Dave. I mean, the last thing you want to do is invest amount of money and an amount of money and then not have it adopted. And then also automating or tech enabling a bad process is just going to make things worse. So I think those are some great points to make as we move towards the top of this model. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about how we approach implementing MEDDICC at Force Management with our customers and how we approach this maturity model framework. Because as John said earlier, there's value in the bottom, right? It's just all about where you are as a company and the outcomes that you are trying to drive.
Yeah, what we try to do in all things is go to customers where they are. And so not everybody is going to be ready for the full Monty, right? They're not going to be ready for this whole thing. You have a couple, relatively small sales organizations, maybe a head of sales and a couple reps, and they want to crawl, right, before they walk or run. So when at our baseline level, we have a digital only offering via the Ascender platform, and you can actually go in there and get an industry certification on MEDDICC, and that works very, very well for a lot of smaller sales organizations or for a larger sales organization that's just looking for basic awareness. It's a great way to get everybody certified on the basics as a baseline for progressing over time. One step over that are digital services. The first layer is kind of digital only, right? It's just a self-paced, everybody gets their certification, then you leave it to the manager to interpret that for live deals and things like that. One step above that is, okay, go through that MEDDICC certification, but then let's get together either in person or virtually to apply what you learned to live deals and then start moving up into that 201 level, MEDDICC 2.0, stuck, unstuck sort of a thing. So that's like a digital with light services. One step up from that is I'm heading up into the programmatic level, where I'm trying to attach it to a value-based conversation. I'm trying to attach it to a sales process. I'm trying to attach it to a methodology. We have our regular MEDDICC and MEDDICC Premium, which really is relevant and customized to customers. And those are the kind of things that where we have initial calls with the customer, we have workshops to make it customized. We have, we roll it out at SKO over a day or two, and then there's a program for several months afterwards that actually makes sure that it sticks. And then at the apex, we have a Salesforce.com plugin called OM, Opportunity Manager, where we take the data, the MEDDICC data, and we represent it within the CRM. It snaps right into the CRM, and you get a graphical representation, a spider diagram of how I'm doing on each one of the letters. And there's like guided discovery to figure out where am I really, so that we're not, fooling each other. So, and then obviously with the value-based conversation, our brand of that is command of the message. So there's, a lot of times we'll roll out MEDDICC with command of the message because now we have two hands clapping. So we try to go to people where they are, and then it kind of scales over time as well. Good job,
Dude,
Clapp.
you just ripped my face off because I'm hearing you like I'm thinking about the progression that we've had at Force Management. You take me all the way to Opportunity Manager, and this isn't a plug-in, just a plug-in for Salesforce.com. This is a snap-in that has, when I mean snap-in, it's like in line immediately with reps, and it's an opportunity assessment. It's called Opportunity Manager. You just kind of rip my face off when I think about the progression there. And I know we're talking about kind of a walk, crawl, run, or crawl, walk, run. I'm like, when I'm listening to this, I'm like, run, sprint. I mean, there's no reason. We talk about meeting people where they're at, wherever they are, but I can't think of a single reason not to take MEDDICC and get people emotionally connected to it by, getting it enabled, getting it tech enabled, getting it into the common language. And now Rach's like, you're going to probably get me, say I'm going to get in trouble here. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to bash any vendors out there, but I got a couple of pet peeves. So I'm on a call this morning and somebody says, well, we understand you're the godfather of MEDDICC. And I stopped him right there. I said, I'm not the godfather of MEDDICC. We didn't create MEDDICC. MEDDICC was created at PTC. I happened to be a foot soldier at PTC, and I became a commanding officer because of my use of MEDDICC at PTC, and we had incredible, all the things that you're talking about, Dave, to make it programmatic. We had an incredible experience with it. So I want to give people some spirit. If you're talking to somebody right now and they're talking about implementing MEDDICC at your location, like, I don't want to be a jerk. There's tons of opportunity to go around. I believe that there's, the abundance mentality. But Dave, we got a lot of cleanup on aisle 6 that we do, and people are like, they go and they do one of these implementing the letters thing, and then it doesn't work, gives MEDDICC a bad name. People call us and say, hey, that's old time, old school methodology. I'm like, you're absolutely wrong. I don't say that to a customer, but it's in my bones. Like, it's like an X-ray machine. The bones are different. The bones breaking are more complex. What the X-ray machine can see now, because the problems are different, but it's still an X-ray machine and it works unbelievable. It's like how you apply that X-ray. So a couple of things I want to just get off my chest here, Rachel. If you're talking to somebody that's doing MEDDICC, just ask them a question. Have you ever used it? And I'm serious about it. Like, I would not buy or implement from anybody that's never used it. I'm not, oh yeah, we used it. We wrote a book about it. And no. Did you use it to change outcomes? Did you use it to change your disposition in life? Did you use it to drastically impact the performance of a company? And let's say, okay, well, I'm a little bit younger. We didn't, whatever. I don't care. Tell me how if you implemented it somewhere. This program that you have, what happened to the company? Talk to me about the results, 43 straight quarters or that kind of thing. That's what I'm looking for. And if you get those answers, go ahead and implement with those people because you're in the right direction. There's a lot of people out there that wrote a book. There's a lot of people that, never lived it. There's a lot. And I'm not saying you can't, if you weren't back 30 years ago, you can't do it. That's not what I'm saying. But if you haven't used it like right now, to change your disposition, to change your people's disposition, to change your company's disposition, to change your customers' disposition, then you ain't using MEDDICC.
Woo! Woo! Great final thought, John. Appreciate you for that. Dave, do you have any final words of wisdom for everyone watching this video?
Clean up aisle 6 for me, Dave.
Yeah.
Bring us back.
Hang on, we're going in. Yeah. So I think the big thing here is, and the reason why we invented this in the first place was so that people could be purposeful and thoughtful in how they make a decision with a partner that may be able to get them to a place they can't get to on their own. So it's a good model because I think you first have to understand why you're doing something. It's the old start with the why. And why am I doing this in the first place? What am I looking to get out of the program? And then how am I going to do it? This model is a how, but it is really powered by why am I doing it? What do I want to accomplish? And then your how will fall off. And you may have a why and a what that points you to just basic awareness. That's great. Go for it. Or it could be, we really want to make a splash. We really want this to be transformational. So we have to go for something that's a little bit more industrial grade. And both answers are fine. What's not fine is an unrealistic expectation that if I troll this bait, I'm going to catch that kind of fish when that's really never meant to be. Right. So just be purposeful. There's no wrong answer other than a misaligned answer between expectations and who you choose to partner with. Because it's a big decision. And if you mess it up, it takes a while to correct it. So choose wisely.
Choose wisely.
Choose wisely. 100-pound brain has spoken. Drop the mic, Dave. Drop the mic.
There we go. Dave, John, thank you for this conversation today.
Thank you. It was a blast.
And for those of you watching, be sure to check out our own MEDDICC offerings on forcemanagement.com and Ascender.